Tim Tollefson. Welcome to I didn't even tell you the title, Where the Climate Things Are podcast and event, resource hub, etc. We'll get into that later. I am having this kind of emergency podcast because you just posted something very urgent, very important for the trail running community to hear. That's in regards to the outdoor environmental recreation space. And so I was wondering if you could give us a little more of a sense. Well, first of all, introduce yourself as you're doing this, because obviously, though you need no introduction for some people, I would love you to introduce yourself for those that don't know you. And then also give us a little bit of a sense of like what's going on. And then I'm going to ask you a couple more questions to define the topic we're going to discuss today.
So I need to put that on hold because you just announced possibly the greatest title of a podcast I've ever heard. Big kudos. I am a fan of that. Like, I don't think I can even think clearly the rest of this conversation. That's amazing.
Your
mind
is
blown. Where the climate things are.
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah. You're going to get ready to be tagged from several accounts that say that today, because that's what's going to happen.
Oh, yep. Absolutely. It'll be a privilege. So my name is Tim Tollefson, and I, by trade, am a physical therapist, professional trail runner, and now I am, curious about the event space, and I am a bit of an event director and getting most recently into this nonprofit work with specifically Runners for Public Lands, and basically kind of just a general wandering generality that's curious about things. And but everything ties back to the running domain. Like running through and through is kind of what fuels me and excites me. And this space is something that I've spent most of my life in. So it's, I guess that's who I am, from a 10,000 foot view.
Awesome. Thank you for that. This needs to be a longer conversation too, eventually, because I want to have you on this podcast to talk about your life, your entry point into environmental activism, because I think you have taken that on personally as I've watched your trajectory over the years. But I do really want to talk to you today, kind of sitting here as like the race director of Mammoth Trail Fest and also a board member of Runners for Public Lands, and sort of dive into this topic that's seemingly come up in the last couple weeks, even though it also seems like budget cuts might have been made before the last few weeks, but folks are starting to shed a light on this idea or happening issue of the Forest Service being underfunded. There's staff positions that are either, I think it's not going to be funded or they're going to be cut. Can you just talk a little bit more about kind of what's going on and then also how it affects trail runners?
Historically, the U.S. Forest Service has been tasked with basically managing our public lands and national forests, which is, what is it? It's 188 million acres over 41 states and territories, 154 individual forests. So it's a lot. It's a big geographical region that they are tasked with managing that entire resource. And so they, over the years, have utilized a seasonal workforce to help with all of those duties, tasks. And this is not a new thing, but most recently in their all-call meeting in September, the chief announced that they were not going to be able to hire. There's some 2,400 seasonal workers to manage the 2025 fiscal year because of a massive shortfall in the budget. And what that means is that those 2,400 spots will be vacant. And, that's everything from, scientists and botanists to parking attendants and kiosk staff to trail crews that do maintenance work, kind of camp hosts. It runs the gamut of different positions in like the Forest Service. And basically what we saw through Runners for Public Lands is that this was sort of an opportunity for us to collectively gather race directors across the country and hopefully be a voice for good to support the Forest Service in advocating on their behalf, because they can't really advocate on their own behalf all the time. And so as a very diverse group, which makes up runners, which we have seen roughly 60 million plus people identify as runners in the country, which does make us the largest, most diverse and most frequently outdoor user group in the country of any outdoor recreator. That means that collectively if we put our voices together and decide to do something, we could have hopefully an impact. And there was no real, group advocating for runners specifically. And so Runners for Public Lands took this on and thought, hey, what a better way to kind of start our work in this advocacy space than to rally behind race directors and give the race directors a voice. And because I think it is a way for us to immediately kind of feel the impact and tying it to things that a lot of us as runners love, and that's our races that we sign up for. And this budget shortfall could have an impact on races in the sense that trail maintenance that allows us to actually go out and use the spaces could be backlogged, and or a permit for your race may not even be filled because of the staffing shortage. So there are a number of different reasons why this shortfall in the U.S. Forest Service budget actually will impact us as individual runners. And so we launched a sign-on letter 2 weeks ago. And the cool thing is, I just looked, we have now over 700 races represented across the entire country, which makes up 54 national forests and over 130,000 runners based on kind of that demographic. And so it shows that in a very short period of time, we as runners said, hey, we care about this, let's do something. And we had immediate respondents, which was really cool to see.
That's so awesome. Congrats on all the response. And I know, just as a quick note, is it today? You said the deadline was extended to today for race directors to sign on, and that's Tuesday, December 3rd, right?
Tuesday, December 3rd, the end. So if this emergency podcast goes out and hits all the right channels, you still have time as a race director. And if you're a runner or just a fan or a recreator in general, you can send this to your favorite race director and say, hey, if you didn't sign, get on it. And anyone that you'll have the link to it, but if you scroll down to the bottom, it lists alphabetically every race that has already signed on.
Cool.
And there's some very big heavy hitters out there, including Western States Endurance Run, Hard Rock, Run Rabbit, California International Marathon, Big Sur Marathon, so road races, trail events. And basically what we've seen is that race directors in general are coming in and, in a vote of solidarity with all race directors saying that, hey, this is an important issue. Even if we don't have a race on public lands, we want to support this because not only is it, we talk about races specifically, everyone that likes to recreate in the forest or in a U.S. national forest can be impacted by this. And, we're just using races as sort of the vehicle to.
Totally. Absolutely. I want to ask a little bit more about how other people can get involved that aren't race directors, but I was curious first to ask, as, specific to your race in Mammoth, as the race director, what are some of the issues? You had a great quote in the article that was do you like ducking under trees? Do you like, running on trails that are eroded kind of thing? And obviously everyone's answer is no, those are things that make it really hard. Or do you like when your race is canceled? Obviously not. That's a really sad thing. And so I was curious, what are some of the issues? And this has got to be a longer conversation eventually, because I'm so curious to kind of talk to you, dive into the Mammoth climate changing around that area. But what are some of the things that you see in Mammoth at your race that are issues that Forest Service would be very, very helpful for managing?
Basically, so our event specifically, Mammoth Trail Fest.
Yeah.
I want to say 90+% of the course, 95% of the course is actually on Forest Service land.
Interesting. Okay.
So our entire course is Forest Service, where a lot of events out there might be a mix of, state park or private lands, Forest Service land. But what that has taught me in my infancy as a race director, but also as a long-term resident of the Eastern Sierra, is the importance of building a relationship with the Forest Service. And what I've learned from them over the years is just how vital of a role they play in managing the resource, which is our trails in the Forest Service, for all to recreate on. And so we have massive winters in Mammoth. Well, and as we'll probably talk on another podcast, it's more a boom bust cycle these days.
Yeah.
But what that means is that from the spring thaw, trails will be in pretty dismal shape. And, from blowdowns to just general, erosion and other things going on, it takes a lot of effort to rehabilitate the trails so that people can get out and walk and hike and bike and, be on horseback. And so the forest is tasked with basically doing all that maintenance. And, from our event specifically, some of our favorite trails, like the Dragon's Back, which I know you have suffered up before.
Yes, I have. Remember it very well.
I have been out there, and you have to crawl hands and knees to get under some of those blowdowns, or trees that have fallen from the winter, or climb up and over. And it really inhibits not only your experience, but it can be a safety issue as well. So what I've seen locally is a lot of our nonprofits do a ton of the legwork to help the Forest Service manage this so that we can get out and recreate. And I saw a stat somewhere that a majority of of this like trail maintenance can be done by nonprofits that are partners to the Forest Service. And really, I think it just highlights the importance that we as runners need to collectively start to give back in a positive way and be part of these conversations, and hopefully take action to protect the spaces that we love and share it with more people, but then also be good partners to the Forest Service, because they are, as we said at the top of the conversation, they're historically underfunded and understaffed, and right now they're fighting for a budget to get passed that won't even fully fund everything. It's going to be millions of dollars short. And so like this effort is to, hey, let's at least get the bare minimums, but then let's push for fully funding everything that needs to be done from a yearly basis. I think I read somewhere that recreation is like 2% of the GDP in the U.S.
Wow.
But the funding for the U.S. Forest Service is like less than half a I don't know. It's less than 1%. So there's a big disconnect there. And
totally,
as Americans or anyone that visits, we're all out there on these public lands and Forest Service regions that we recreate, and it's going to impact everybody if it's not accessible anymore.
Totally. I think it was in Zoe's article that said like recreation has gone up, and yet the funding has for Forest Service, for other, recreation kind of positions federally, has gone down. And so it's like not only is it not matching, it's not even keeping pace, it's like truly going down as recreation is going up, which is pretty wild. Nacho. Love that Nacho's our guest too. I wanted to, and also shout out to Zoe for such a great article and like kind of bringing attention to all of this. I wanted to ask what trail runners can do. So I'm a trail runner. I'm not an RD. How can I get involved? Can I do anything? Can I act kind of to get involved? And as you said really well, this is the start, I hope, of the involvement, and it doesn't have to just end here. But for this kind of immediate term, like what can we do as trail runners?
So like, because this is the emergency podcast and everyone's going to hear it, like going back to that, like share this with your favorite race director if their name isn't already listed at the bottom of the sign-on letter. Also just share it in general with your running community. And I think sharing that knowledge and letting people know the importance of this type of effort and what's at stake. So sharing the knowledge. Then I would say support nonprofits in your region that are doing work. That could be, a Runners for Public Lands, or there are a lot of great organizations that are out there, but, go to their websites, find out what they're doing. You can make a donation. You could become a member. You could basically tag along on some of the initiatives that they're probably putting together, because a lot of them will have call to actions of like, hey, this is an effort that we're going to go out and do some trail days, or like a camp and run, so get involved and try to basically be part of the volunteerism that is important to our trail running, ethos, and really embrace that. And then, on a immediate level, like even just simple things like going out and doing some like, trail trash pickup, or like cleaning a little debris off the trail when you're out there. Like if you're on a shred with some friends and you see like some branches that have come down, and instead of just like jumping over them or going around, which ultimately is bad for, the trail prism, as they say, actually just pause your watch and move that branch off the trail and then continue on. Like take 10 seconds to help out a little bit. So it's basic things like that. But I think, the biggest thing any of us as trail runners can do is basically embrace the volunteerism and try to get involved. And, so reach out to a local nonprofit, see, ask, and just share that knowledge as you find out with other people in your own running communities.
I love that. I think this is also, as I just sprung this upon you, but the podcast is really about actionable steps if we can. I mean, climate in general, environmental protection is so tough. It's such a huge issue. And so it's really special when there are moments of action, kind of an entry point. I also want to mention, I think from this article, again, since this is emergency pod, we're going to do this kind of live. I think can trail runners also send a letter to Congress, possibly? I think the Outdoor Alliance, there might be, and I can link to this, there might be
Hope so. And if not, we need to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that was linked in Zoe's article as well for like the RD focus. There was like the race director focused communication, and then there was sort of like, what else can we do? And I think as trail runners or as outdoor recreationalists, we can also send a letter. So I'll link to that as well, which is pretty cool that, you know, the Outdoor Alliance created that. Sweet. Okay. I think that's honestly, I mean, yes, again, another conversation to come. There's so much more to talk about. But I am really appreciative for you kind of laying everything out, telling people what's up and drawing attention to this, because to me, again, it was wild to see how many folks consider themselves like in the running community in the US. It's like a large, many millions, 60 million or something Americans. And this is something that it really does affect even folks that don't consider themselves runners. It's like sort of trail maintenance in general, outdoor recreationalists. And so definitely was a issue I want to talk to you about. Thank you, Tim, for coming on the Where the Climate Things Are podcast.
Man, it's honestly the best name ever. Like I want a t-shirt once you make it. It's,
we might not be too far off from that, so we can talk. There's things in the making. So, but seriously, thank you so much, and thank you for what you do for the sport. Seriously, because you've, as you said, like come from many different directions and are now, you know, coming at this from a race director, event manager position, and you've just brought so many people together. And you're bringing so many people in. You're making the sport more accessible by just creating Mammoth Trail Fest, by being who you are. So thank you so much for everything.
Really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to chat with you. And last thing I'll say is, for people that still are on the fence, like, why should I care? Well, then if you think carrying a heavy pack is bad, we're going to soon have little quivers that are made out of chainmail, and we're going to put our chainsaws in there so that when you're on your trail run, you just have to saw down your own blowdown. So it's
we don't want that to happen.
It's not very much fun.
No, it's not. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon on the pod. Appreciate your time.